Okay, so our presenter for this session and Ultra course walkthrough is Professor Nikki Ware from Somerset. And with no further ado, I turn it over to Nikki.
Good afternoon, everyone. I started to say good morning, but here it is 12:01, so it is no longer morning. I am going to basically just give you a rundown and show you all my course. I'll go through each part of it. As I said, of course, use the chat if you have any questions. If I'm moving too fast or you want to see something in more detail, just toss it in the chat. Say, hey, hold up, wait a minute. I want to know more about that right there. So what I'm going to show you guys, though, is my Sandbox, which is kind of where I've built my course. I only teach one course, which is Reading 185. So I use my Sandbox to create like a template, and that is where I do any changes that I want to happen during the semester or from semester to semester. So that way, if I run across something that didn't work the way I wanted it to in the semester, I can go then into my Sandbox, change it up, and get it ready and already done for the next semester instead of trying to remember to change it once my courses are available to me in Blackboard. So in my template, in my Sandbox here, I left these two things just to have if I ever needed to look back on them. But you'll notice that my course is chunked into six different learning modules. I did this mainly because the textbook that I use is chunked kind of already naturally with chapters. So I decided to create learning modules to keep it consistent with the textbook. So the first one here with the learning module is just my start here, all that information that I want those students to know the first week of class. And then I also remind my students throughout the semester that there's some information in this module that they may need to refer back to, especially like the syllabus. But I also put a copy of my rubrics in here. Another thing that I do in my class is I use some visual cues, and I've created my own banners, but I am going to go back and I'm working on redoing these because I'm not 100% happy with the fact that they have words on them right now. So I want to change them up a little bit, but I do use banners to break up things in the course, and I even included my little Bitmoji here just for something a little extra. Again, this is my Sandbox, so you can see I've kind of got like a purple ad here just to remind me to do my office hours. But I even have Bitmoji or my little banner Bitmoji even at the bottom of each document. I'll click in a few of these to kind of show you what they look like. So I got a checklist where I've got my schedule. These are the rubrics where I said that I have them also included in the assignments, but I also wanted to include them here so that way students could look at them both ways. If they weren't able to find them in the assignment, they'd always have another option to look back at them. But I tried to keep things very consistent with my layout. Each learning module looks the same, and even tried to keep things consistent with the start here. Best of my ability, to say the least, because there's a lot of information in this section. Let me close out of this module, and we will get into looking at the learning modules, which is where you'll see the various chunking that I've done and more of the consistency and the visuals that I've used throughout. Does anybody have any questions, though, about the start here first? Anything that I had in there? I think
there's nothing in the chat.
Okay. to see. I think one thing that I didn't show you all is I think the welcome that I made with my little Bitmoji. Again, I mean, they're fine as far as I know, ADA wise, they're fine with the writing on them as long as you label them properly. But I think that I want to go back and just kind of take that off because most of the time it's duplicated. I also have it written here too. So I'm going to do some more tweaking with my visual cues. I like having them in there because I do think that they break it up and think it makes the course a little bit more personal to students. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I do. I feel like it's a little bit more personalized. They see a little bit more of my personality in the course. So with the first module, I started each one with a module overview that it goes through just kind of what this module is going to be talking about. Each of my module overviews kind of have the same banner, of course, the kind of the look. Competencies have this same banner with the same Bitmoji on each one. Just created one and done. I tried to find Bitmojis when I was doing this that kind of went with what we were talking about. So like the activities, I did hit in the books. And this is where I have a listing of all the activities in the module. I did do an end banner, and if it's done and done, that just means you've completed reading this document, kind of move on to the next one. And on assignments, that end banner is different. It actually says mission accomplished, to where, so it's a little bit different to where it shows, hey, you did something here. You've completed something. But each of my learning modules start out with what the 3 chapters are going to be about, what we're going to learn about, the competencies that go along with them, and all the activities that they will find in the module. In my class, we have a common read at SCC, so I have reminders for them on what they need to be reading because their assignment for them is at the end of the semester for reading this book. So again, common read, Bitmoji, just me sitting in a beanbag chair reading. Just as a reminder, hey, you need to be reading. And on the first one, I did include a picture of the book just to make sure that they have the right one. These links, I am not going to click on those because those are links out to my Cengage. I like to include the individual chapter links. That's totally optional for some people. I know several of my colleagues here at Somerset prefer to just have one link placed in there, but I like to have the individual links. I feel like it helps the students see and understand that, hey, you have something for chapter 1 that you need to do. You have something for chapter 2 that you need to do. This personal choice on your part, but I like placing them in there. What I did with this is I put my Cengage stuff in here, of course, in the order that they go to. And any time that I have an assignment that goes along with a chapter, I put it in with that chapter.
Nikki, did you see the question in the chat?
Yeah. So, sometimes it does take a little bit to load, but none of my students have ever fussed about it. But yeah, I mean, if you have students that are getting frustrated with it, I would, definitely look into breaking it into maybe smaller modules. Yeah, Stacey, it does create a lot of links, but I've just found out that again, I teach reading 185, so I don't know if maybe my students might be a little bit different than others, but the majority of my students are first-time students, first semester students. So I try to design my course in a way that everything's really right there for them, no finding anything, no searching for anything, because sometimes they can get very overwhelmed and get lost in it. So that's why you'll see probably a lot of my stuff is duplicated, even like the rubrics being in multiple places. Yeah. I see a lot of you guys still talking about the banners. Yeah, I like the banners. I got a little creative with it, but now I want to tame it down just a smidge, just a little bit. I still like my Bitmojis. I'll probably keep them in there, but I think I want to tame them down just a little bit. So in this module, I do have my links out to the assignments and to the e-text because my students do not have to purchase the textbook. So that's why there's 2 links that you'll see for each chapter. And then as I go down, you'll see this is the Blackboard assignments that I've created for my students to do. So this is a discussion board that I have them do. And then this is a vocabulary mind map assignment. And one thing that I do with my assignments like this is I break them into a lesson and an assignment. And in my lesson, this is where I kind of go over what a mind map is, what I'm expecting from them. This is where I include any examples, any videos that I have. These are very elaborate mind maps, and I tell all my students that. This is where I would link my videos for them to watch, a little bit more information about them. And then when they actually go to the assignment is when they actually see what they're supposed to do now with that information. So I break them down a little bit. Elsewise, this is something that I learned the first semester, I guess, that I started using Ultra, is that if I have a lot of information here with the assignment, I have to do a lot of scrolling when it comes to grading. So I decided to break my lessons and my assignment part into 2 pieces. That way the students can focus on one and then move on to the assignment. Then also, I think it kind of helps if they're kind of cutting close on time or something. They got maybe 15, 20 minutes to review something. They can look at that and then move on to the next section. I'll go ahead and open up my module 2. You can see again that I start out with module overview, reminder about the crucial conversations with the chapters that I want them to read while we're working through this module. The chapter 4 stuff. Chapter 4 talks about outlining, therefore that's where I put my outlining strategy before we move on to the chapter 5 stuff in Applia. Again, I did the lesson information with examples and videos, and then the assignment is actually on the next not the next document, but then it's after the document lesson. And you guys can see my mission accomplished Bitmoji there. And then with my Sandbox, you guys, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, I don't do due dates in my Sandbox. I go ahead and do my points and my rubrics and attempts and anything like that, but I leave my due date blank because I'm using this as a template. It's a little bit easier on me when I copy things over to set the due dates. So. Oh, thanks, Christina. I cannot take credit for this. That came more from the Cool Academy people. Because if you've not been through the Cool Academy, totally suggest it. It was awesome. But a lot of the way that course is designed is you get lesson and then assignments. And it works. For me, it works way better than having a lot of stuff on one page. And again, I have first-time students who a lot of times this is their first class, whether they have me face-to-face or online. I feel like it breaks it down in a little bit more of a manageable chunk, even with dividing the assignment into 2 sections. Same way with my summarizing. I was looking for, there's something else I was going to show you all. This is what my discussion board looks like. I do put some information in it instead of dividing it out as a lesson like I did the others. I keep it all together on this one with information and what to view and then what their instructions are for the assignment. I did not use banners on the discussions, or at least these, because there was already a lot of information there. I felt like it might be a little too much. But now on my module concept checks, I did include a Bitmoji there. Let's talk about it. Again, just something different for the students. So it's not so plain Jane, I guess is what we want to say. I usually try to do chats with my students, especially, oh, I don't have this one created because this is my Sandbox. Let me scroll back up and I'll show you that one. I usually try to do at least 2 chats with them, whether we, almost always the first week of class, I try to do one. And then I usually try to do one midterm. If not, we'll do it towards the end of the course. And I also have a little visual there. Let's, video chat on that one. And for the video chats, I use Teams. I've used Collaborate. I like them both in here. That's probably for another session as far as that goes. Yeah, I imagine now the banner session is going to be full. So we'll just scroll down through these modules. You guys can see that they are still content as far as the order that I do things in. I have my module overview, competencies, activities are there. My crucial conversations, after that first one, I just have the reminder. I don't put the copy of the book because it is a lot. I will say one thing, if you do the banners and any type of images and stuff like that, just kind of be mindful of how much you are putting into your Blackboard shell because they do have some space limits. I link mine as cloud items and stuff like that anytime that I can to help with the size of the course. So again, like my discussion boards, I didn't put a lot of stuff in there as far as banners and stuff because I wanted to keep them kind of a little bit neater, I guess I could say. Oh, that's awesome, Sherry. Yeah. I have both face-to-face and online classes. The majority of my students are online. So my template I use for both classes. So my face-to-face students get the same information that my online students do. The only thing is they get me during class time. Yeah, Deanna, yeah, everything seems to copy just fine. What I typically do, instead of doing just a course copy, I typically export mine and then import it into the one I want to copy, and then it keeps everything kind of bundled the way I have it. But again, I mean that's kind of a preference thing on that one. It's just that, like I said, I use my Sandbox. I only have the one class, so I use my Sandbox as kind of like my master template. So it's easier for me to do the export and import. So like as far as when like Deanna was talking about like links and stuff, when I do that, I don't have any problem with my video if I've linked out or if I've embedded it, anything like that. I don't have any problems with that stuff not working or having to go in and redo it. It's all there. Talking about copying though, one thing that I have noticed is my discussion boards, because I have them in a certain order in my modules, it seems to work better if I export it and then import versus copy, because sometimes when I copy, my discussion boards get moved around on me. They're not in my learning modules sometimes. So that's another thing. And I don't know, maybe that's just the quirk with me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know. But I find that every now and then they're not where I originally wanted them. So I have to go back in and move them. Now my module self-assessment, this is something that I created in Google, basically, just to kind of see where my students are. Questions are all the same on each one of them. And it's like, I'm proud of the work I did in this module. I learned something new in this module. I managed my time well. I asked them what they really enjoyed, what they did not like, what they felt like they did not master, and what their goal is for the next module. This is just my self-assessment. I don't give my students points for this. It's really just to get some feedback. Not all students do it. Some do, you know. And it's really just for me to kind of look at and get some feedback as we go through this semester to see kind of which assignments they like best and which ones they really didn't like. Because if I see that a lot of students are telling me that they really did not like that outlining, then maybe I need to change it up or rework it somehow. Yeah. Yeah, Christina, that's what it was. My discussion boards were just ending up at the bottom of the course, and I was having to drag them to where they went. Um, and honestly, I got tired of doing that. So I learned that if I do the export, it doesn't move. And if I create like a welcome announcement, it copies that too when I export it. Oh, thanks, Erica. I try my best to be student focused on that one. A little bit of information about what I want to know about the class for myself, that I don't get from our course surveys at the end of the class, but really just kind of, ask them some questions, have them be thinking about where they're at with their work. I don't give extra credit for those self-assessments. I mean, it could be easily done if, because once they submit it, they get like a little screen that says it was submitted. So, I mean, you could always have a student do a screenshot of that and submit it for a few extra points. Totally doable though. So this is my fourth module. So this would be like the end of the textbook, the last of the few chapters that we do. Talk about arguments. We talked about facts and opinions. So I did like a little facts and opinions quiz. I don't know how familiar everybody is with Ultra, but I'll show you what it kind of looks like. I do have a little video for them to just to refresh. I give them 2 attempts on this quiz. Highest grade will be recorded. And honestly, it is a very, very simple quiz for students. It's just a few questions. I do a matching, what an opinion is, what a fact is. I do, and then the rest of them are true false questions. like what objective information is based on data and observation. Opinions are subjective. It is up to the reader to verify information. And then if you base an opinion on fact, then it becomes fact. So just a quick little quiz just to refresh and make sure that they understand the difference between facts and opinions, objective and subjective. And I caught the tail end of the last session, and there was a lot of discussion about the test, creating test exams in here. There is the fallacies assignment, of course. This one is a short one, so I didn't really have a lesson with it because it's something that we cover in the textbook, different types. So I just had a reminder video and then the instruction. But it does go directly after the chapter that it's discussed in. That way students can always refer back to it. I try to keep assignments next to the chapters that they're in. That way students can refer back and forth. So, again, you know, same little image for my discussions, just to try to things consistent throughout. My self-assessments are the same for each one of the modules except for the last one. And I'll show you guys that one too. But they're the exact same questions. So, last module still has a module overview. The only thing different now is it doesn't have the crucial conversations piece because the student should be done reading it by this point in time. Instead, it has a writing a summary lesson, some information about it. We already talked about summaries earlier in the semester, so that so there's not as big of a lesson here. But I do have a couple PDFs for them to review and videos before they move into the assignment of actually creating and submitting their summary. Yeah, I just used Google on that. This was, I did that, the self-assessment last semester. I added it. So I really hadn't messed around with some of the Microsoft stuff, but I was familiar with the Google form, so I just did it in Google form. I mean, you could use other, whatever I guess you're most comfortable with. Yeah. My last one is a little bit different because it is the end of the semester, so I do ask them just in general, you know, are they proud of the work they did in this course? I learned new skills in this course. I managed my time well during this course. Time management is a big thing that I hear students always fuss about, is especially, you know, first time students, first semester, struggling to figure out when they're going to study, how they're going to complete their assignments, along with everything else. So I try to remind them that it's important to be thinking about time management throughout. And then the last one is I will use some or all the strategies I learned in this course in my other courses or workplace. Hopefully with the class of the different reading comprehension strategies that I cover, they plan on using them. So that's just kind of one of those reiterating the fact that, hey, these strategies can be used elsewhere besides this course. And then I also have my finals team week chat in there. It's also a placeholder one because I always just wait till a little bit closer to the date to find a time that usually works best for my students. All right. Anything that you all would like to see again, or I guess we could do a student preview if you guys want to see the learning modules from the student side. And you can also see that I did a banner up at the top of my course too. just something a little bit different. Because I will say, while I do love Ultra, on the student side, they do all tend to look the same. So I try to do something just a little bit different with mine to where hopefully they say, oh, there's that Bitmoji. I know I'm in my reading course. Or there's that. I know this is reading. I guess that plays into part of the visual cues and part of the consistency too between things. Yeah, I will gladly show it from the student view. So student view, when they log in, of course, they're going to see just this information. One of the really cool things that I love is the little bubbles that show how much that the students have completed. Okay. I love this part. So you can see what I've clicked on and what I haven't clicked on in here. Okay. Yeah, I like that idea. Something different. So you can see from the student side, they have the banners and all that. And now one thing that is really neat with the learning modules that I love is the students have these navigational arrows at the top of each of the documents to move through. They don't have to keep going back out by using the blue X over here. They can navigate through with the arrows. So let's look, I'll show you guys from the student view what one of the modules look like. So they have the navigational arrows. I don't know if this works the same for other things. I know with Cengage, the navigational arrow is there for the chapter 1, so it would link them out to that on the next page. So, and of course, I don't have it there. It's just as a placeholder. So, same way with that. It moves into it. They'll get the description, or they can move on. I'll click through all of them, and then we get to the discussion board assignment. Vocabulary assignments from the student side. Anything else that you want to see specifically on the student view? Or anything in particular that maybe I went over a little too quickly, because I tend to do that.
Nikki, since it's quiet in the chat right now, I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
So, as you were transitioning to Ultra and rethinking your course design through this entire process, what were some of the stumbling blocks for you? And what decisions did you come up with? What were the things that kind of threw you for a loop when you transitioned to Ultra, and how did you make it work in this new modality?
So I was one of the ones that was part of the Ultra pilot. And when I initially built my course, I built it like I did in Learn, and I had weekly folders essentially. I didn't use the learning modules. After doing the Cool Academy, where I had like, a mini existential crisis when I realized I say that jokingly, guys, I really do. When I sat down and started planning my course and started mapping it out and looking to see how my competencies matched my assignments, and had a moment where I seriously wondered if I even knew what in the world I was doing. I decided then that I wanted to go with the learning modules and chunk my course better instead of doing it by weeks. Um, I think in some ways the weeks might be easier for some students, again, because I teach the, usually first time students. But I think with the module, taking a step back and looking at it using the learning module, I feel like my students get a better understanding of how the pieces work together. And I think that was something that I struggled with initially, figuring out how it fit together myself to chunk it. If that makes any sense there. But that was something that I know I struggled a little bit with, is changing from my weekly to chunking it by modules. But the more and more I dug into it, I realized that it actually benefited the students more because they could see how the individual chapters kind of were scaffolding and building upon each other.
Have you gotten, and this might be too far to go because often you don't get this kind of response unless you solicit it kind of explicitly, but have you gotten any feedback from students that they can see that difference?
Not specifically on that. I do know that my students there for a little while, I occasionally teach FYE 105 or 100 sometimes, and we were using Learn in it, and then my reading students were using Ultra. Now we did talk I had several students point out to me that they really liked my class that was in Ultra versus in Learn, because they felt like it was easier to navigate. Now again, I don't know if that's just the difference between them, or maybe it was because it was chunked more into the learning modules, multiple chapters in one area.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? I know we have a moderator, but I've kind of taken over on the question side here.
Yeah, Stacy, I mean, I do. I think part of it is where it's streamlined, and it looks a lot like other websites and stuff. But I also think that as a lot of us move to Ultra and have been moving to Ultra, I think a lot of us are kind of rethinking how we design our courses too. And I think it could be both. I think it's easier to navigate because it's, streamlined, but also the way that we're doing our courses. I know locally here, we've had several PDs and working with different faculty to transition their courses over. And I think it really helps to look at, what you're doing and start, building it in Ultra kind of from the ground up. Well, any other questions about anything in the course or anything that you saw that I did or would like to look at again?
So I do have one more question, Nikki.
Yeah.
I was kind of in and out of this session, running around in the office, and I know I saw that you had linked your textbook information in here, but
Mm-hmm.
did you have a chance to talk about like the process for that? Did you work with your publishing representative for that? How did you go about that? And how do you have that linked in? Does it go directly to the content they're reading?
It does. And no, I didn't talk to my publisher people about that, my rep. I just clicked around and figured it out myself. Because that's what I do. The way that I go in and add it, and I mean, I'm sure it could be a little bit different, is I just use the content market and add it. And with the Cengage, I think somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, one of the publishers does not allow you to do the individual links. I'm glancing back, but it seems like somebody said something about that. That maybe it was McGraw-Hill or Pearson won't let you do the individual chapter links. As to where mine will. Mine, I use Cengage. So this first one is the e-textbook. And then the second one is the homework. Okay, I see what you're saying. It'll do them. It's just a pain to do them all. Yeah, and I think that's kind of an individual thing. I like to have mine do the multiple links for each chapter because I feel like it's easier on the students. But now, as far as my grade book goes, my grade book only has one column for the Cengage stuff. It does not have the individual columns for each homework. Very true, Dr. Wheat. It is a lot of links. And again, this is my only class, so it's not as bad. If I had 2 or 3 or more preps, it would definitely probably be a different situation because it is a lot to add in. So for me, I have the individual links for the students, but as far as the grade book, with Cengage, you have the option if you want each homework included in your grade book, or if you just want an overall score. So instead of having a whole bunch of extra columns in my grade book, I do have it set to where it's just one score on the Cengage. So lots of links in the modules, but only one column in our grade book. Yeah, I think that would work out really great. Because the first semester, that way they're learning how to navigate and where everything is. And then the second semester, just that single link in there. Yeah. Yeah, I am in the Sandbox, so I don't know what all it shows us. Probably not much. So this is, again, I don't have my due date set. I don't have anything, I don't think, actually in order in this Sandbox. And this one does have the individual Applia homework links before I switched it over. So when I copy it and log into my Cengage and stuff, I set that there. So these links are not automatically there. So if they're not required or practiced, no, they don't show in the gradebook. So like even with my Cengage items, there are some things that are practice in there. And if it's something that I choose on my settings when I set up the Cengage on whether or not I want it to appear in the gradebook. And some of the stuff in my gradebook, like this new calculation, that was me playing the other day to show somebody how to do something. Because I also use my Sandbox sometimes to try to figure things out and then go back in and delete it. I'm not sure about the McGraw-Hill. I don't have much experience with that. Maybe somebody else on here knows more. But I mean, at the same time, students should be able to go into the McGraw-Hill and look at their grade book there. Because I know my students can actually see their individual Cengage grades within Cengage. Just in their Blackboard gradebook, they only have the one column. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So that'd definitely be a question to ask them for sure about that, because like I said, I don't have much experience with it. Cengage, it's a pretty easy to put it into the course. We just go to Content Market. You can see that I've linked it, but I usually just click on the Cengage here. Select my book. And then this asks me right here, the gradebook is set to update activity scores, switch to overall score. This is where I can choose what I want to include. I can include links to the flashcards, which I don't. I usually just do the chapter, and the homework is where I choose my links. But I do the overall score. And with the Cengage, again, it's going to be different, but there is a box over here that you can choose if you want it added to the gradebook or not. Where I do the overall score, the boxes on the left side select my links to be added, but then I will uncheck these because I don't want them individually added to the gradebook. And then once you're done, you just hit continue, and it will plop them in there. One thing that I have learned when you're going through and adding these is that if you are adding individual links, I suggest being in the learning module or the folder that you want the links to be added to and going chapter by chapter instead of selecting a whole bunch of them at one time. Because if you select them all at one time, you're going to have to move them. I changed my categories. You can do that from this page on the Cengage, but we'll just leave it for now. We'll just leave that be. So where I was not in a learning module, it added mine before it, which again is an easy fix. Anytime that you have it goes to the wrong spot, you can always drag it to where you want it at. So like when I'm building my modules like 4 through 6, I'll go in and do my content market, click on my Cengage that I've already created and choose chapters 4, 5, and 6, the links that I want put in there. And then it'll put them specifically in that module. And then if I need to reorder them or put other assignments in between them, I can. Any questions about that? I feel like we kind of went through that a little quick. So if you create your discussion here, I don't know. That's a good question. I always create them in the module. Leah, Kim, Erica? I'm not sure. I usually create them in the module just because that's how I kind of build my course, is I work within a module at a time when I was building them. Okay, that you can drag them. I wasn't for sure. It seems like there is an option somewhere that says something about showing it in the in a module. Yeah. So when you do create it, it's under the settings wheel, display on course content page. So yeah, Deanna, if you created them there, you would just go to the individual one, click on that settings and display. Yep. Good question.
Well, I think we're about out of time. So does anybody have any final questions before we take off?
I'll throw my email into the bottom of the chat in case somebody does think of something. If they have a question about something that, I've done in my course, feel free to email me.
Perfect. Thank you. So Nikki, thank you so much for being here with us, and thank all of you for spending part of your, well, afternoon. It's still morning for me. I'm in Central Time, but only for a few more minutes. So thank you all. Again, this recording will be available after Ultra Week is over, and I'm going to stop recording now.